Today guys, for you I have the unboxing and review of the Retevis RT24 Plus. So why don't I just take this out of the box real quick, and then I'm going to show you some close-up shots, because on my channel I already reviewed like a previous version of this Retevis radio that was kind of like similar to the Baofeng 888, I believe. And since, at least in Europe, the Retevis RT24 seems to be the, how do you say that, the model that replaces the older version. I want to see what exactly has changed. So let me just quickly take this out of the box, also out of this packaging, and then I'm going to be right back and I'm going to give you some close-up shots, and I'm also going to compare it against the predecessor, the Retevis H-777. And so guys, maybe you can see this here. It comes in a very plain but still somewhat stylish packaging. And for all of you who don't know, I believe that Retevis is like a trading company based out of Hong Kong, if I'm not mistaken. And at least in Europe, in my case in Germany, these seem to be really popular because they have like a little bit better support apparently than the Baofeng company. So let's have a look inside, and I'm really curious to see if there is any difference. Because one of the major things that we had, I believe in Europe, was that the predecessor, the Retevis 777, I believe, was, at least in the case of Germany, not compliant with the local laws and regulations. And I've seen cases where people, when they bought the predecessor was marketed on Amazon as a walkie-talkie, and people thought, oh my god, it's a walkie-talkie, I can just buy it and use it. But when they actually were using it, it was programmed on some odd frequency that wouldn't adhere to the frequency plan, and basically you would transmit illegally on some weird frequency where you're not supposed to transmit, and potentially risk fines. And yeah, from all I can see online, I think the Retevis has figured this out eventually and now made these new radios compliant. So they should really be on the PMR frequencies. And one thing, at least in case of the law in Germany, is that the antenna has to be fixed. So as you can see here, the previous model, the antenna was removable. With this model, it's not removable. So what I did for you guys, I just quickly grabbed the predecessor. This was the predecessor, where you can also find a review on my channel. And obviously the predecessor, you can easily remove the antenna. For example, take the stock antenna and replace it against like a slightly larger one. But in that case, at least in the case of Germany, that is legally not allowed if you're using PMR frequencies. So they must have really attached this here permanently with some kind of pin. And secondly, maybe you can see here, it seems they also have reduced the output power to be compliant with the local laws. So what you maybe want to do if you're located in the US or elsewhere, maybe check with your country specific regulation of using these radios. Always be sure not to buy radios and transmit on frequencies you're not allowed to transmit, because you potentially could risk fines. Having said that, it appears that the new radio is like a little bit bigger. I like the design, and it's a little bit flatter in the front, where here the old one had like a little bit of a bulge going on. But I'm sure you have seen these previous models somewhere. So let's check the battery, and it appears the new model here has like a little bit of a reduced battery size, while the old one had a little bit larger battery size of 1,500 milliamp hours versus 1,100 milliamp hours. But I think it makes sense, because if they have a reduced transmission power of 0.5, then maybe they should use less energy. Wow, that was really loud, insanely loud. So yeah, I'm pretty curious to see how these performs. And another difference is that the RT24 has a USB charger as opposed to the Retevis H-777s, where the charger came with the power plug, with the wall plug for your specific country. And one criticism that I heard about the previous model was that obviously this plugs into the wall, and there's like in case of Germany, 240 volts. And as you can see, the wire is pretty thin. So there was like a criticism, oh my God, what happens if this wire gets squeezed or breaks? Then you're exposed to the electricity more easily. And I believe these wires, they have certain standards, and legally and for safety reasons, maybe they should have used a little bit thicker wire to have a more protection going on. And obviously the Retevis RT24 won't suffer from that, because guys, it's just a USB cord, so no harm done. So I think that saved them some cost and also made it safer to use for the average user. And I think ham radio operators, honestly, I don't think there are that many. If I listen to the local repeater, there are not that many young people who use ham radio anymore, because everybody runs around with a cell phone. But like a simple walkie-talkie or PMR radio, that's probably easier to sell to the masses than having something that's very, very specific, where you have to take an exam to be able to legally transmit on the amateur radio band frequencies. And yeah, this is the new headset. I think the headset looks way more massive and improved as opposed to the old version. That's the headset that came with the old version. It looks not as solid in quality. So I think while they maybe cut some cost at the battery, made the battery smaller, they gave you a little bit back with, I mean, like this, I think it has a nicer feel than the predecessor in the hand. And if you think about it, for a lot of people, they maybe just want to use this in and around the house. So the low transmission power is probably not going to do much harm. And even if you use the predecessor with a bigger antenna, which you're not supposed to do, I'm not exactly sure what the transmission power was on those. I'm guessing twice as much or maybe 3 times as much, but still your range is still somewhat limited. So in any case, these radios are, if you're looking for something that has a huge range, like where you can get kilometer after kilometer after kilometer, you probably should really look at getting the amateur radio license and get a professional radio, maybe like the Wuxon or something like this. That way you can get further, and also you can use the repeater. And like I said in the beginning, the troubling thing was that people bought the predecessor version on Amazon and then just gave it to their kid, and they would transmit on some weird frequencies. Now that this is solved, I'm pretty convinced the Retevis sales, at least in Germany, are going to go through the roof. And I'm really curious to see how these radios perform. So guys, what I'm just going to do before I keep on talking, I'm just plugging this into the USB charger, charge them up, and see whether they programmed on the right frequencies and what kind of range I'm getting out of those. So let's do this right now. So guys, we are jumping now to part 2 in this product review, and it's testing the range and performance of these Retevis radios. And as you can see here, I placed the 2 radios here, and I pulled out 2 of these USB chargers, and I'm just gonna put them in here. That's like the only downside to this change to these USB chargers. You need these USB power supplies, otherwise you cannot charge them. So let's quickly plug this in, and I'm gonna flip on the power and then put these 2 into the charging dock. That should take a moment to charge, and then once it's charged up, I'm just going to go outside and do a little bit of a range test. Okay, this one was not properly seated, and I hope you can see this here. There are some kind of guide rails or something where you have to slide it in so that it's properly seated, and then once it's charged, the LED will turn from red to green. Guys, so far I really like the build quality of this Retevis RT24 a little bit better than the predecessor, the Retevis H-777, because I feel they're like a little bit bigger and have a little bit nicer build quality. So the real downside of those will probably be, in comparison, the range. So guys, basically what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna grab coffee or tea or something, let them charge up, and then I'm gonna head outside, and my thinking is I'm gonna have like some distance points where I'm just gonna go to some set distances and measure the performance, and then I'm just putting the camera on one of these radios, and with the other radios I'm gonna go out, and then you can see how the reception is while I'm going further and further away. So that's just gonna take a while to charge, and I'm gonna be back in a second with the distance test. Distance test number 1, about 420 feet, should work without any problems. Distance test number 2, about 790 feet, should work flawlessly. Test point 3, about 1,250 feet. Test point 3, about 1,250 feet. Test point number 4, about 1,540 feet. Test point number 4, about 1,540 feet. So guys, this should be test point number 5, about 2,000 feet in distance. Test point number 5, about 2,000 feet in distance. Test point number 6, about 2,300 feet. Test point number 6, about 2,300 feet. And guys, I'm going to stop it here. I think that should be fine if you're still hearing anything. So guys, this concludes the review of the Retevis RT24 two-way radios. And as you have seen, the performance is not that bad. I mean, considering the price point, those are very affordable radios. And basically all the way through until the last point, the measuring point number 6, where I was about 2,300 feet away, the performance was pretty good. Granted, at the last point it deteriorated somewhat, but that was probably partially due to the fact that the signal had to cut through quite a bit of trees and vegetation. And at the last measuring point, I was also very close to a power line and some cell phone towers. So that might have interfered a little bit with the signal quality. Personally, I think if you're somewhere on a countryside with some open pasture or something, you can get probably significantly more distance. On the flip side of that, if you're somewhere in the city center where there's like a lot of concrete buildings, that might even deteriorate, negatively affect your signal distance. So with that, my conclusion is that for in and around the house, those are really nice radios. You can give those to your family or kids or something to play with, or use them yourself. It's a really nice thing to have around. I am enjoying them very much, especially because of the build quality. I don't mind that they don't have that tremendous distance. If you consider they're not really designed, and I think they're not meant to have the big distance, because I think there are like 8 channels or 8 frequencies or something that are for this PMR frequencies. So if everybody would have like this huge range and you're somewhere in a city, then you would hear the guy from the other part of town constantly, and the channels would clog up fairly quickly, as opposed to if you have only a small range, a lot of people can use the same frequencies without interfering with each other, because the range is just not that big. So if you, on the other hand, want something that has really this huge range, maybe you should consider stepping it up a bit and maybe get like a Baofeng GT3. Only thing to consider is because this essentially has, maybe I can zoom in for you a little bit here, it has like 5 watts of power, so that's 10 times the power of one of these small radios. I think they just have a half a watt. But hey guys, like I showed you, for most people that's totally sufficient. People don't necessarily always have like these huge distances. If you go hiking and you're close together, that'll still work. And the main benefit obviously is you don't need a license for these smaller ones. For the bigger ones that have the high output power and operate in different frequency bands, it's a different story, because with that added power and that added frequency range comes the responsibility of having to take the ham radio test, the exam to get a license and your call sign. But hey guys, I digress. So I showed you everything that's to know about these radios. I see you in the next video, and maybe also check out the video about my Baofeng GT3. That was one of my earlier videos. Maybe this video is better than the one of the GT3. But in any case, I see you as a subscriber on my channel. All the best to you. Take care. And yeah guys, like I said, there's a lot more useful videos on my channel. For example, how to buy a used Mac Pro on eBay and upgrade them to be a really super fast machine for 2018. And for this you can find a 6-part tutorial series on my channel. And yeah guys, surprisingly more and more people have already subscribed to my YouTube channel because of the useful content that I provide, and you can subscribe now as well. And I see you in the next video. Take care.